What is up, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of the Launchpad podcast. In this episode today, I had my buddy Josh on, and we talked about some cool things. We talked about psychedelics, we talked about magic, we talked about a specific acid trip that Josh had once upon a time that led to some changes in his life. We touch on a little bit of everything in this episode, and I think it was a good first start. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it.
Merging with simulator in 3, 2, 1.
Josh,
Hey, how's it going?
what's up, man?
I guess doing a kind of podcasty kind of thing.
Yeah, the Launchpad, bro. Here it is.
It's been a long time in the works, man.
Yeah, it has. It's starting to come to fruition, though, and I'm happy to be here talking to you today, dude. Really appreciate you, taking the time to do this with me, man. So obviously, I know a lot about you. You're like one of my best buddies in the entire world. I probably know more about you than I would say just about anybody, but the people listening to this are loyal 6 followers of the Launchpad podcast. They don't know who Josh is, so could you just, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, why you're here,
Well, why I'm here is a pretty big question. Why are any of us here?
Well, I guess this is just the this is the reality that we stepped into, in the multiverse. This is the coincidence that we engineered, being right here, face to face. Well, sort of face to face, But
It's close enough. It's close enough.
Yeah. So
I like what you've done with your background, by the way.
Oh, thanks, man. You like me and Huddy back there?
Yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
upgrade. I like how everything's kind of sprayed around it.
Thanks, man. Yeah, who is Josh? I know that is a very loaded question, but I guess just for the audience's sake, who are you, man? Well,
So, let's start with what I am as a just an ego. I am a college graduate. I've got a degree in biology. I work in tech. I play around in finance, and I enjoy painting a lot. I really enjoy painting. I have a dog, 5 lizards, a snake, and several bins of bugs. I like to garden a little bit.
yeah.
And I generally enjoy both video games and going outdoors and, just kind of getting some sun on my skin.
Yeah. Well, I got to say, man, I'm a huge fan of your paintings, and I'm a huge fan of the paintings that we have done together. As a matter of fact, there's one hanging up right there, this one above the Buddha statue that me and Josh did
That was a really
together.
good one.
That was
a
a good
really
one.
good one.
I think the best one we've done is that one right there, though, underneath the ETs.
Why don't you bring it out? Why don't you take it out? Yeah, that one was weird.
It was, we had some good inspiration for that painting, though, to say the least.
Man.
Yeah, absolutely. But, yeah, man, so, me and you met a few years ago, and we've been best buddies for a long time now. We've had some interesting journeys together, and we've really dove deep on a lot of these, topics that we're going to be talking about in general for this podcast, when it comes to, the therapeutic use of psychedelics and altered states of consciousness and all sorts of, woo-woo esoteric bullshit. But, no, and like all seriousness note, though, man, how did you kind of get started with, your use of, say, psychoactive compounds or altered states of consciousness?
To start with, I'd say once upon a time, a guy at a job I was working at just offered me the the shit in his little one hitter. Said it was just ditch weed, but
Yeah.
that was weird. And from
How
there,
old-
I was like
How old were you at the time?
17.
Okay.
17, yeah. So I did that, just the smallest amount, and then kind of fooled around with that for a little while. Maybe went overboard with it, and then at some point, I was hanging out with some buddies, and one of them says, "Hey, do you guys want to try some LSD?" And I said, "What?" He split up a few pieces between us, and
Wait. So at the time when he said this, when he said, do you guys want to try some LSD? Did you know what LSD was, or was this like the first time you're hearing about it?
I had a vague idea of it. It was more of it'll make you see things and you'll act
shit.
weird, which were both correct. Those both
Yeah.
happened.
Did they try when he was telling you about what it might be like? Did he try and relate it to your experiences with cannabis? Where they like, oh, it's going to be a really strong, like, very trippy weed high for 12 hours. Did they do anything like that to try and prepare you
No,
for
and
your?
here's the fun part. The fun part of it was none of us had really tried it. So it was
shit.
just this brand new experience for all of us. I think the guy who had it had done it once at some point in like some very small dose.
Okay.
But there were three of us. I still don't know if it was actually LSD. Like, you never really know. But it was very visual, very emotionally impactful.
Right.
A lot more visual than usual, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say was the emotional impact, or the sort of what resonated with you about that trip? Like, what, you know what I'm saying? Because it's your first time with I guess you can say, a true hallucinogen. I mean, marijuana is a sort of mild psychedelic compound, especially when you have a low tolerance and smoke some good stuff. But what was the sort of emotional impact of that first LSD trip?
See, the funny thing was, because of that trip, I don't see marijuana as being like a psychedelic. I don't see it as being particularly psychoactive. It's more like psycho-inactive. So
Yeah.
just not do a lot. But on the LSD, it really it put me more in touch with my emotional states. It didn't elicit any grand realizations or super impactful emotional moments. It was more of, oh, I have feelings. That's weird. Where are those? Where have those been?
I got you. Did
And
you
it
feel
kinda
like?
just,
I'm sorry to cut you off, but did you feel like your sort of underlying emotions that you may not have been fully aware of were being brought to the surface because of the LSD? And like, I think marijuana can do the same thing too. It's just that I think me and you have talked about this personally before, that marijuana has this sort of spirit to it where if you want to use it to sort of disassociate from your life and just numb yourself out, it'll allow you to do that with it. But I think, using marijuana intentionally, interacting with it, being conscious of how you're interacting with that marijuana, you can use it as a positive tool. I feel like it's just that a lot of people don't. They use it as a sort of escape.
absolutely.
Not saying that everyone does. But anyways, the point I'm getting at is marijuana kind of has that spirit to it where you can use it to numb yourself out. But LSD or some of these other classic psychedelics like mushrooms, you take them and they have their own sort of like agenda being played out, in terms of like, there's that classic saying of psychedelics don't give you what you want, they give you what you need. And you can't take it. I mean, maybe some people can, dude, but most of the people I know, they can't just take LSD to numb themselves out. Like, it's the opposite effect. It is it is, called a non-specific amplifier for a reason, because whatever your true internal state is, it gets amplified, Did you feel like that was sort of what you were experiencing here?
So don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to shit on weed as an overall experience, because I think it has its place, and I think I definitely misused it.
Yeah.
Absolutely did.
Yeah.
As far as LSD goes, I find it to basically be a party. Every time, it is truly an amplifier, and it pulled out all kinds of emotional states that I just wasn't in touch with at all, and that really started the progress of me coming into control over those states in terms of not being super anxious for no unexplainable reason. Suddenly I can emotionally understand where that non-specific anxiety would be coming from, and I would be able to kind of work with that. LSD as an experience it really lets you step out of that me ego and look at yourself from a third person perspective and start using what you see to improve things. That's what I got out of it. That's how I experienced it. And from there, from that experience with LSD, I didn't do that for a long time again. It was a very long trip. It's very much more than I was expecting. But I did get very into mushrooms after that.
Heck yeah, man.
I would go with friends. We would go on camping trips. We would take some mushrooms as a group, just kind of have fun. And that's actually when I started doing drawings and stuff while I was tripping, is while I was doing that.
Okay. What do you feel like you get out of creating a painting or a drawing while tripping, because for me personally, it seems like I have a hard time articulating what is happening emotionally and physically and in my head, all this shit, with words. After the trip, I can kind of piece it back together, and
I can't.
Yeah, human words have there's really not a lot of words out there that are great for describing these sort of mystical fucking experiences, man.
Well, they're not part of our day-to-day experience, so we don't generally create words for something that we generally don't experience.
Right. So do you feel like that's one of the things that drew you towards making these drawings? And do you feel like there's therapeutic value in making these paintings, creating something under the influence of, a psychedelic, man?
So one of the first instances of this, I have dozens of journals and notebooks, but one of them has the date and captain's log dropped at whatever time it was. And then every 20, 30 minutes I would write something, kind of keep a journal. My goal was I wanted to remember what happened on the trip, because it always felt like I was missing a big chunk of it mentally, because there's so much to process that when you're back in your normal state, you can't really access it super easily.
Right.
So I wanted to take some of that with me. So I started this captain's log. I was doing 23 minutes, and over time you could actually see my words kind of get looser and just start turning into drawings and pictures until it was just full-blown scribbles all over the page and drawings everywhere. And I was like, this is a lot easier than trying to do this with words.
Yeah. Definitely.
So as I got more into it, started getting into the painting side of things, I see it as just a very effective way of expressing what was going on in your brain during that. It's like a snapshot of where you were at.
Yeah.
And it's also a nice little discussion piece for you and your friends. So,
oh, absolutely, man. I love having, those cool paintings hanging up and getting to, tell the story and where you're at in that headspace. And also, I think it serves as a nice little reminder. You know what I'm saying? When you see that painting on your wall, and
Oh yeah.
say you made that painting during an acid trip, and during that acid trip you had some sort of deep revelation that stuck with you, and was changed your behavior pattern in a certain way or something like that. It sort of helps reinforce and helps you integrate that experience in a way. I think it possibly can do that. Not saying you make a painting on acid, you're going to be a better person, guaranteed. I think there's more work to be done than that. But I think it's a useful tool. I think the Groffs, the whole, I think it's Stanislav Grof and his wife, the holotropic breathwork practitioners, the people who, would lead people through these holotropic breathwork ceremonies where they would experience this insane altered state of consciousness and, deal with past traumas and all these things. One of the things that they talk about that was integral and huge for their integration process was they'd make these mandala paintings of their experiences. And I thought that was really neat. I read that book while I was in jail, man. I'm like, we've been doing that for years. I was like, we've been doing that for forever. But
now the interesting thing about that, if I can interject here, is generally when you're making mandalas, when you make a sand mandala, the point of it is to condense the energy of a situation into a particular visual metaphor. And once you've done that, you scatter it, you destroy it,
right?
And it's to facilitate the understanding of the fleeting nature of things. So when you're dealing with traumas, it's nice to take that trauma, give it a visual form, and then let it go.
Yeah, definitely, man. How do you? So you told us about how you sort of got started with that first acid trip. And then you started taking mushrooms a lot, in a group setting out in nature. How has your relationship with psychedelic compounds, altered states of consciousness, how has that evolved and changed? I would say in recent history, in the past few years.
Before it was. I know this sounds weird to say, in the whole scale of, psychedelic culture, but it was to get fucked up.
Oh, dude, that's how a lot of people get started, and not that is the correct way to use these tools, but that's just, it's human nature to want to change your state of consciousness. Do you know what I'm saying?
I see it as we don't have a shaman to be like, hey, this is the medicine, you should try it.
Yeah.
It's more of, man, life is kind of weird. Maybe I should try these weird, funky things.
Yeah, and man, I gotta, that's how I started out, too. A lot of it was a very hedonistic, pursuit that I was taking. And through trial and error and some tough experiences, I kind of learned to dial it back. I learned to dial it back and use them as a tool and use them with respect, and that's what a lot of, I preach about now to people when they ask me about it, or, I'm just like, I'm not telling you can't use these things hedonistically. Everybody needs to walk their own path. There's nothing wrong with if you and a buddy get together in a safe place and you want to take some mushrooms and have a fun time, you're a sovereign being.
Maybe go on a nice little hike.
Yeah, but just taking these things to sort of constantly escape and not using and not integrating what you learned during the experience. I think a lot of people start off like that. So yeah, don't feel bad, man. You're just you're almost as enlightened as me, so you should not. Yeah.
So basically, as time went on, I started using the drawings as a lodestone of me looking back and being like, so what was I thinking about at that time? Like, what was going through my mind? that actually started helping me integrate the experience to better myself, to figure out what is the thorn in my ego right now, what is the issue that I'm just too in my own head to look at. And it really improved that. So over time, I did that for a few years. I mean, I was still having fun with it, but it became less about being a group party and more about what can I see that I'm not seeing.
Right.
And then for a few years, I took a break for several years of just stopped. I probably shouldn't have, because instead I just smoked weed, and that didn't really improve the quality of my life. It was fun. I had fun with friends, but whenever I started doing psychedelics again, I noticed this very sudden change in the quality of my life, and it's just consistently moved upwards.
Yeah. And that's not like a you microdosing every day type thing, or you taking psychedelics every weekend. That's like you've had a select handful of large, impactful journeys, and correct me if I'm wrong here in any of this, that, have served as a sort of metaphorical little launch pad to your continuous and like never-ending, sort of improvement journey that you're on. And as your dear friend, I've watched you come a long way in a very short period of time, and I'm very proud of you for that, man. And I do think that, and I'm not, this disclaimer here, I'm not telling you that this works for everybody. I'm not recommending anybody to go out and take psychedelics, but in your case, Josh, I have seen how they have been a positive influence for you when you've used them respectfully, and like I keep saying, you've integrated what you learned in these difficult moments.
So they are quite literally a mental tool, and like any tool, as I've heard you say before, you can either hit yourself in the head with it a bunch, or you can use it the way it's supposed to be used.
Right.
And I think I hit myself in the head with it a bunch before I started realizing how to use it.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's just part of the process. If you don't have a shamanistic guide, you're not going to know how to use them properly. You're going to have to learn from it,
right,
from the experience and from the spirits behind it.
Right. And well, that's how a lot of people do end up learning how to use these things or developing the relationships with them, is through trial and error, because and the culture is shifting right now. You know what I'm saying? There's this sort of psychedelic renaissance that's kicking back off, and I love it. But for mine and your generation, man, we grew up with the whole DARE programs, war on drugs. Don't do drugs. If you do any drugs,
my DARE officer got arrested for dealing coke.
And dude, shit like that goes on everywhere. But yeah, you're right, man. Our society doesn't value. Our society is so hyper-focused on conditioning people to be worried about sort of materialistic gain. And not that isn't important.
Just be worried.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need to be scared. You have to be scared all the time.
Yes.
If you're not, then something's wrong with you.
Right, yeah. If you're not worried about something, you better find something to be worried about. Like fucking... But then, and that's the sort of Western philosophy, but like you take like Eastern philosophy, and it's like, the Buddhism, the Hinduism, and they're like, well, your goal in life, and with all these things, I think any sort of extremism, any sort of ism is unhealthy, but they focus more on like, well, coming to peace with yourself and your spiritual growth, not necessarily your materialistic career growth and all these things. it's just interesting to see how someone like you navigates those waters of, I guess you want to call it the spirit world or higher dimensions, whatever the fuck we're tapping into, dude, with these compounds, how people navigate that, having grown up in a society that conditions them to think that if you believe in that shit, you're crazy, you're a tree-hugging hippie.
Oh,
you know?
Man, you're a schizo.
Yeah.
You're schizophrenic, and you need to be in a hospital for your own safety.
Yeah, man, and like, it's when I made this channel, it was very refreshing. A lot of the comments I got about people being like, "Yep, I've seen it too, man," or "I've had a very similar experience."
Yeah,
because
I was a little surprised.
Yeah, man, just because, you know, like, as you know, I've smoked a lot of DMT, and I've had a very close relationship to it for quite some time. I've had a lot of experiences, and when I try and talk to the average person about that, it's not like I'm going to Walmart and being like, "Hey, bro, have you tried DMT?" But, you know, it can come up in conversation, and when you talk to somebody who hasn't experienced that yet, you get looked at like you're crazy. Like you're full of shit.
It's fear. They're literally scared. They literally can't comprehend what it is or why you would do it.
Yeah.
Because it's so far outside of their norm.
Yeah, and we all live in these sort of, you know, our own individual reality tunnels, but yeah, man, it's interesting to watch, like, yeah. So what would you say, man, like, has been the most impactful journey you've had? And, like, could you tell us the story behind that? Yeah.
I think I know which specific thing you're asking about. And so I've had quite a few strong, impactful experiences. They wouldn't be, like, directly life-changing, but they'd elicit small changes that would improve things and snowball into better things. But I had one. And this was a couple of years, 2 years ago now, and it was, I overdid it. Dose responsibly.
Yeah.
I realized I was always scared of kind of plunging into the deep end and seeing if I could swim on that kind of stuff. So I took a bit more LSD than I was used to.
Yeah.
And I lost my mind completely and utterly. I remember I looked in a mirror and I said, "I don't know who this is.
Yeah.
Who am I?"
Yeah.
And that was where I go, "Uh-oh, that's a scary question to ask."
Yeah.
And suddenly I had my paint set in my hand. I was like, "Oh, I'm a painter. I should paint something." And then I started painting. And then the colors started talking to me. And I said, "That's a lot more than I bargained for. That's way more than I usually get." So I am hearing all these different voices all around me. And this, I would call this the first spirit world experience. And I don't know if they are autonomous voices that reside in the machine elf dimension, or if they are my own brain eliciting a psychosomatic response from my surroundings and just attributing personalities to things. But my surroundings were straight up talking to me. So I was just like, "Oh, I broke. This is schizophrenia all the way, for sure." I'm absolutely terrified at this point. I don't know if I've ever been more afraid of anything in my life. I can... fear itself was one of the manifested personalities. And I was just like, "Oh shit, this is bad."
Can we give the listeners a little context here for this? Because I remember, if I recall this correctly, this journey happened at the Launchpad. And for people who don't know, the Launchpad is my old apartment that I used to have, where a lot of journeys went down, and I used to have and hold DMT ceremonies. But anyways, you took a very large dose of LSD. We're at the Launchpad, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the dose was somewhere around like 600 micrograms, right?
I think it was
800. Okay.
Yeah, I think.
But
and I don't think that the dose really mattered so much as comparison to my very loose grip on reality.
And that's the point I wanted to make. Is I remember at this time you were at sort of would you call it a low point in life? Like me and you had not been friends for. We had been friends for a little while, but not too long yet, and you were at sort of a transitional, transitional period in your life where things were uncertain, where you probably knew subconsciously and deep down that there were some big changes that you needed to make for yourself, you know what I'm saying? And I think that was, that might have been a big factor leading into why you had such a deep plunge into that other world,
So this is going to be a bit of a trigger warning section for your listeners. So just a fair heads up, suicidal ideation's coming up. So coming into this, I was going absolutely nowhere in life. I'd spent years and years and years studying and getting degrees and certifications and this and that, and I just couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't do anything. I was stuck working a dead-end job at Walmart. I was absolutely miserable doing the exact same thing over and over and over every single day. It was literally killing me. I had very recently lost I wouldn't say small fortune, just through various trading practices. And that by itself wasn't that bad. It sucked. But the fact that I was stuck doing the exact same thing every single day, going nowhere, was really what was just eating me alive every single day. So I was I was kind of grinding my nose against rock bottom there for probably the last year of that. And at that point, coming into this trip, that was kind of where I took the plunge. And I was just like, I want to see what the hell the monkey on my back is. I want to figure it out. I hadn't gone into something that aggressively before. That much of, I am going to get to the bottom of whatever's going on with my brain.
And I'll say, man, I'm happy that you did it at my apartment, because I didn't know for sure, but I had a feeling that you were going to face some challenging things just because of all of the reasons that I described a minute ago and what you've been saying about, your kind of state of mind leading into this trip and where you were at in life. But I think it's important for listeners to know that if you are going to take a deep dive, to be somewhere where you feel safe, that is safe, where you
be safe, be prepared. There's no real preparing for dealing with your own mind, but don't jump in the deep end right off the bat. It's just not smart. So going into this, basically, what it all boiled down to, while I'm listening to all of my surroundings talking directly to me, and it was like physical people speaking into my ear, I'm having them, some of them are very supportive of me, some of them are not. And specifically, there is a voice that is just edging on suicide. It is just like, bro, do it. Like, why aren't you doing it? Right. And so what it boiled down to is I had to have a very real, very serious discussion with myself on whether or not I wanted to be alive. And it was kind of my coming to God of, is life worth living? And what it boiled down to, the first thing was, well, obviously I have a dog to feed, and I can't just up and not feed him. He needs me to go feed him. So that's number one. And that was like this bedrock of I had things that were reliant on me. That I love my dog. I love my animals. So that was the very first thing of being like, yes, of course there are good reasons to stay alive. I want to go home. I want to cuddle on my puppy. He's great. And it's a hard topic to talk about because it's like
Very personal.
society has an incredibly society has a very negative view of suicide, and for good reason. But it also makes it very difficult to discuss it just completely openly. So from there, it was that was stage one of my schizophrenic breakdown. That was just like tip of the iceberg. I only have scattered memories of the rest of the layers.
I remember in the ensuing weeks, you know, because obviously we kept in contact. You know, we hung out and checked in on you and shit. But you seemed in the ensuing weeks to be going through some sort of I don't know if you want to call it psychosis, some sort of shamanic initiation. I don't. Whatever it was.
Can't be the same thing.
Yeah,
sometimes.
for sure. Whatever you want to call it, you were going through something. You know, the effects of the psychedelics, while you may not have been tripping after they wore off, they still were there. Like, you know what I'm saying? Things were different. And, you know, so
very different,
and you're telling us, you know, that you were dealing with suicidal ideation, which I'm sure, you know, I commend you for, you know, being open, honest, and transparent about that, man, because, you know, not a lot of people want to do that and talk about, you know, these deeply personal things. But, you know, so you're dealing with these thoughts. You probably had been dealing with them for quite some time. You're in a rough point in your life, and your LSD made you confront the idea of living or dying, you know. And from what I take away from that is that you decided life was worth living, you know. And what do you, and obviously you mentioned crypto, but was there anything else that really stuck out to you in that sort of moment, your connection with the divine, the higher dimensions, whatever they are? Was there anything else that really stuck out, like, I want to do this in life, or I want to become this, or I don't want...
Oh, no. That's the funny part. I still don't have an answer for what I want to Josh to be. It's just more of, I appreciate the day-to-day moments of things a little bit more. I don't have to be something. I have to learn to do things I enjoy that uplift me rather than just crush me.
Okay.
As far as that experience went, there were several things that I just won't get into, but I had a discussion with a being that basically hallucinated a completely different reality for me for a little while. That was very strange. I'd say I spoke with an angel and a devil.
Yeah.
That was very strange. This whole experience was so psychosis-like that at the time I couldn't even question what was going on because it was so real. It was so visceral. And then over the ensuing weeks, and it was 2 or 3 weeks, my ego slowly started reforming and coming back together. It was a little cleaner this time. We got some of the gunk out from the very, very recesses of it. But the memories are still there. I don't hear voices all the time, or really any time, except whenever that is the event that I'm trying to elicit through psychedelics or something. I don't have these world-shattering discussions with a divine entity.
So, like, how would you say, in the grand scheme of things, since it's been, you know, a couple years now since this trip, what role do you think that experience played in, you know, the sort of reality, the universe that you step foot into after that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
So, I want you to imagine that you, yourself, you, Gabe, are like a pair of shoes that God is just slipping on for, 100 or so years to play a video game.
right.
Do you think he wants to play Box Stacker Simulator? Or do you think he wants to play Forest Explorer?
Definitely,
That's
definitely
really
the
difference.
latter. But at the same time, you know, I'm going to sound very, very wise right here, but the duality
Okay.
of things, man. No, I mean, I think there's something to be said about, like, experiencing the bad parts and the good parts, you know? Like, no matter who you are, man, there's almost always, ups and downs in life. And you can get it to the point where there's more ups than downs, and you can enjoy the journey for what it is. But
You can get to where it wiggles
yeah,
diagonal.
but if we really are these little expressions of God, the little fingertips of God coming up out of the ground, like I think God is doing that to experience everything. Obviously there's the very blissful things, which, let's face it, human beings are like little pleasure-seeking monkeys. We crave. Yeah, we crave the pleasurable things, and most of what we do at the root of that is the desire to be happy, to be loved, to be safe. But yeah, man, the duality in things. I think God wants us to experience the bad things too. Sort of.
See, I actually, if I can interject on that, I actually
Really?
don't believe that.
Like-
and I know this slaps the face of Buddhism and all that kind of
Well,
like.
explain.
We're here
Explain.
for all. We're here for all of the experience. When a child touches a stove,
Mm-hmm.
a hot stove top, they learn don't touch
Right.
it again because
Right.
it hurts. I think that our experience is just a multifaceted God learning where the stovetop is and how to stop
Okay.
touching it.
Okay.
He doesn't need us to burn every different part of our body to realize, hey, that's a hot stovetop, that hurts. We don't have to experience that. We can understand that is how that works. I think God wants us to learn how to live a pleasurable life without going overboard
Yeah.
on it, but how to live a less painful life is also a
Right.
big part of it. And I don't think we need to experience every form of pain to know how to
Maybe,
do that.
maybe not. But if everybody, and do you think everybody is a part of that equation when it comes to God? I mean, because if that's the case, there's a lot of people out there who are handed a pretty shitty deck of cards, or hand of cards, man, and they are going to live. There is some people out there, man, on this earth right now, who are destined to live a pretty miserable existence. And so I just wonder. Yeah,
They're
and
in
maybe.
hell. They're literally living a hell experience. Like, I know that they've got a shitty hand. They've got a horrible deck of cards, but that's literally the point of religious missionarianism, to some degree, for some religions, is to go to these people and be like, here's how you get out of hell. This is here's the secret. You can get out of this. Your ego is the thing entrapping you in this. And I don't know if that's a karma thing, like they're born into this hell because they did something bad in the last life they have to pay for, which in my opinion is a pretty shit way of doing it. Like, how are you supposed to learn your lesson if you don't even remember why you're being punished? Like, it's dumb. But you have these people who literally have the keys to a blissful experience And their job is to go out and spread that. And everybody that is entrapped in hell is stuck there because they don't believe that that's possible. They don't believe that somebody can be blissfully happy. So they just don't listen to them. They ignore those people. They say, you're crazy airport pamphlet people. I won't talk to you. And I'm not a Hare Krishna. I believe that there are different groups of people who have ideas that can massively improve your existence. And I believe that the ego is what entraps somebody long-term into hell.
Well, I mean,
living hell.
I agree with a lot of what you're saying, man. But what I think about is, me and you can go on fucking Google and type in how to meditate, how to be a Buddhist, all these things. How to be enlightened. For everybody listening to this, go take my online enlightenment course. It's only $900 a month. I'm totally kidding. But, no, I mean, we have access to an abundance of information. What I think about is, like, say, the kid in Ethiopia who parents are abusive, who has to walk 4 miles in the scorching hot sun to go get drinking water, who doesn't have access to these ideas, the thoughts of just be here now, man, just sit there and just be present. Like he's never been taught that. There's some people who are never gonna be taught that. You know what I mean? Oh
yeah.
So that's where I guess you could say the duality in things comes into play with God. Like, I don't know. It's kind of a pessimistic thing to talk about. This idea that God regardless of if these souls are connected to God, part of God, or separate entities, whatever, there's going to be people who live a miserable existence regardless of, how much information there is out there to be at peace, Some people don't have that.
It is literally the most unfortunate thing about existence. But a big part of the true religious experience, the spiritual experience, is to uplift people towards heaven. And the idea is that the more people that you can help uplift, or at least get the clutches of hell to loosen up on them, the more people you can do that for, the closer the whole world is to achieving the blissful heaven state.
People who don't know, process. Josh is a devout, Bible-thumping... Totally kidding. He's not. He's just making a point here, but... I'm
very spiritual, and I think religion has a place to play in that. I don't think that condemning people out of hand for irrelevant acts is particularly important. I think that is a misplacement of attention. It is its own pitfall. Whenever you are hating on something, you're focusing your attention and their attention to that thing, rather than praising something where you focus attention to the positive thing. You want their attention and energy to be directed towards the positive, and it's the same for yourself. If you're focused on all these negatives about other people, well, that's a pitfall. That's
I like the point you made about, say, religious missionaries and trying to uplift people out of their maybe literal hell or metaphorical hell that they're living in, right? And I see a correlation there going on with this sort of psychedelic renaissance that we're living through right now, man. Because as anybody who's into these sort of things knows, there's a large emergence of, research being done. A lot of people are talking about psychedelics, man, for their therapeutic value, for their ability to improve people's quality of lives. And if you know any psychonauts or know a lot of people who are into these sort of things, you know, they talk about this stuff. They like to spread their message. They gravitate towards I don't want to say to tell the next guy to do mushrooms. It's not what every psychonaut's mission is out there to do. You know what I'm saying? But
No.
they want there to be a sort of awareness shift towards these things, you know, because for the longest time it was just condemned. You were an outlier if you participated in these sort of things.
It is the oldest form of
Yeah.
traditional medicine. It is the
Yeah.
oldest form. I don't understand how in the last couple hundred years we've been like, whoa, this is devil
Well,
stuff.
it goes.
Whoa, I'm going to smoke my tobacco and leave
Well, it goes
alone
back
that
to what you
much.
said earlier, man. I think a lot of it had to do with fear and control. You know, that's what a lot of the
It's very about control, that's
know,
for damn sure.
yeah.
That's another thing about. I know there are completely destitute regions. There are places where I literally have to compare it to hell. But in a lot of these remote areas, there are still traditional psychoactive
Right.
medicines that improve the connection
Right.
between people, and that in itself is an uplifting kind of path towards heaven. That is, in those places, that is how they don't need to
Right.
learn Buddhism. They just need to learn how to be together and be positive
Well,
with each
and
other.
I
how to
think
work
that
together.
the Buddha himself has a quote that goes along the lines of something like, "My teachings are like my finger pointing to the moon. Don't mistake my finger for the moon." And from what I really like that quote, man. I love it. Yeah.
That's a
And what
good
I
one.
kind of get from
That's a
that
good one.
is this idea that when it comes to religions or spirituality or all these different beliefs, they all, I personally believe, have the same sort of juicy source to them. The source of that's the moon, the
That's the
divine.
moon.
Whatever you want to refer to it as, Jesus, Krishna, Buddha, the DMT entities, whatever the fuck it is to you, man, that's the moon. And your finger, your perspective of how to get there, your individual finger, isn't the only path, you know? I think with a lot of these things, people are reaching for the same sort of thing. They just don't have that broad enough perspective to realize, well, this guy over here, we're kind of both trying to get to the same goal. It's just that I believe in Jesus and he believes in whatever. You know what I'm saying?
That's why I gravitated away from the dogmatic side of things. I still enjoy learning about religions. I really like the cultural roles that they play, and they help me connect with the people who follow whichever particular brand there is. But they all make the mistake of saying their followers think this is the moon. It's not the moon. It's the finger. It is pointing. It is giving you a binocular view of the bigger picture.
And I think
thing,
that's
the
where
shebang.
psychedelics are playing such a crucial point right now in our history, is because for so long, I think human beings have felt this feeling of there's something missing, you know? And when you have a very strong psychedelic experience, it's not... There's a difference. The difference between having a psychedelic experience and, say, like a religious belief is that a religious belief is a belief. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but that's what it is. Right.
It's faith-based.
But a psychedelic
truly
experience
faith-based.
is in your face. It is something you can experience. You can directly commune and feel that divine force, whatever it is, that higher power. And man, I feel like that was such an instrumental part in my own development as a person through the experimentation with these things, especially with DMT, is going into all of this. And I've talked about this in one of my videos, I was pretty agnostic, just in terms of like I wasn't out there saying God isn't real, but also I was of the mindset of like I don't know, and I don't think anyone else really knows. So I'm just kind of just going with the flows of life right now. But after having some pretty fucking crazy DMT experiences, man, I felt a higher power. I experienced a higher power, and I never thought that was going to be possible in my lifetime. Like I thought that was something I was going to have to wait until I was dead to figure out.
So I actually thought I was too unimportant if there was a God, because I was agnostic too until I had some world-shattering experiences. But I literally thought, like, why would God talk to a lowly worm like me? I'm so far beneath his attention. It's like not even possible. And then I was like, oh wait, whoa, this is not the case at all.
Yeah, no, and I just think that
I think that's the problem with religion a lot of the time.
Right,
It makes you feel that way.
I think that's sort of why so many people are interested in having these psychedelic experiences right now, is because people are craving, that connection, that true visceral feeling, because let's admit it, man. Like life is sort of daunting. It's a beautiful experience, and there's so many things to be grateful for, but being a human being can be very painful in a lot of ways, and I think that's why people need to know, or a lot of people want to know, that there's something else to this. This isn't just like, it's like what you talked about with your suicidal ideation. It was like, is this shit really worth just like going through? And a lot of people.
Yeah. Is it worth being tired all the time?
And you see this repeated endlessly with these studies that they're doing now, these legal studies with psychedelics, where people are coming back and saying things like, it was the most impactful and important experience of my life. And that is, and a large amount of participants are saying that, and that is, they're saying it is more important than things like their wedding day, than a child being born. You know what I mean? I don't know, man.
I will literally say that experience saved my life.
Yeah, dude. I just remember watching you, in the following weeks. It was a little scatterbrained. Yeah.
I was grizzled, wasn't I?
Yeah.
I was grizzled
but
out.
Then it was like the Phoenix, man. It was your necessary sort of death and rebirth, metaphorical death and rebirth. You didn't Josh Tilson as a human being his heart did not stop pumping, but the sort of ego that
the ego, all those layers, like just clay that's been added on over and over, just broke apart, and I got to step back, and kind of look at how I wanted to reshape it and take out some of the chunky, toxic bits and just toss them out of it. It was literally like working clay, but with my own brain. And I wouldn't super recommend it. Felt like I could have easily gone off the deep end during that experience. Like, very close to it.
Well, and I think
fine line on
one of the things you had going for you, which I recommend anybody going through any sort of spiritual crisis or psychosis or whatever it is, to reach out for help, man. Like, I think, you had a good support group around you, and, I was happy to be there for you in that time, because I knew it was a very transitional moment for you, and I myself had experiences and been through this sort of very similar thing where it's like, well, fuck, like, I really got to change some shit up. Like, you know what I mean?
I was mostly just scared that I had broken my brain. It was just kind of like, oh no. But the interesting thing was, suddenly I had a newfound appreciation of my day-to-day things. I literally, for a few weeks, I would go and do my job at Walmart, which that job sucks. It sucks. But I'd go in each day, and it wasn't that I hated doing the job. It was I enjoyed moving through experiences and talking to people and generally just kind of being present. And I had this realization. This was the big shift that happened over that time, was the more attention I gave something, the more I focused on something, the more that thing would grow. And I had been focused on being miserable and upset and unhappy and doing this dead-end job for so long, I had completely stopped giving focus and energy to positive things in my life. So I went in, I dutifully did my job, I worked, but my attention, the energy, was focused on how can I improve my life? How can I start looking at the things that give me satisfaction and pleasure rather than misery and upsetty spaghetti? And all of a sudden I had a new job. I got a new certification. I got a job in a tech field. All within...
Yeah, you got it.
Within a year.
You got a new house. You started some new hobbies. You started some new hobbies, you know. You spent more time in nature, man.
I did.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it. When you're inside, you're in a human ego. When you're in somebody's house or business, you're in the ego of that thing, that entity. If you go out into nature, you're in the ego of God. That is God's domain. That's like you have no control out there.
Well, I think
give yourself over
one of the things you touched on there was sort of that having this experience was a huge perspective shift for you. And I think that was probably very instrumental in your development and, you're becoming happier, having a better quality of life and stuff, because a lot of what dictates your happiness is your perspective on things. You know, you see people all the time that are, say, in a third world country, dirt poor, walking around with a smile on their face every day, sleeping in a little hut. Then you have people here in America who are fucking driving Mercedes and have 3 houses, and they're miserable, 24/7, miserable. Yeah.
It's connection. How connected are you to the people around you? How connected are you to the things that make you
it's their perspective
actually happy?
It's their perspective on things too,
That's all
man.
it is.
You know, the guy in the hut, you know, he in his perspective, he's like, well, I got a family, I got friends, I got sunshine, I can walk freely around the jungle. And the guy in the Mercedes is like, well, I got this responsibility and I have to accomplish this and I have to be more disciplined in this. And not that having discipline is a bad thing. It's definitely a good quality and trait to have as a person.
I have to go to the gym 2 hours every day or my body dysmorphia will hurt.
There's a balance with everything in life, you know. But I'm happy that, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that I'm happy to see that through your experience you were able to achieve, you know, sort of a better balance of things and reach a point of better, you know.
I call it enlightenment, you know.
You're enlightened.
I feel pretty enlightened now. Like, there's just like this burning sun in my soul that's just radiating.
Yeah, well, and that's why we started the classes, everybody. Our online enlightening courses.
I'm happy, and you can be happy too by giving me money.
Yes. Yes.
Is this how we start a cult? Is that a cult thing?
Yeah. It's very similar. Once we start getting people to do weird shit for us and like believe in us as like better than them, you know, and that our ideas will fix their life, and it's
Bro, I'm going to come up with some crazy lore about the machine elves for them to worship.
Oh,
Just be like, this is how it all...
Took enough DMT, figured it out. I know all the answers. Which, man, like, if you think about it, I feel like, and I was definitely in the same boat myself at one point where it felt like, all right, if I just do this enough, I'm going to get all the answers. Like, and not that
I'm going to learn.
Not that, like, I wanted the
learn it all.
Power, but it was like I saw it as a sort of magic bullet, you know, like to just. But I quickly learned that there's an, you know, forever ongoing sort of investigation into your own internal psyche, and because think about it, the world is infinite, externally and internally. There's always something new to explore. You're never going to figure it out. And if this is a game that we're playing, right? Life, if it's some sort of game, what fun would the game be if we just got the answer? Like, you know?
Sometimes it's fun to cheat.
Hey, I think, yeah, having little shortcuts, maybe little cheat codes to help you along your path is fun. But to just like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's part of the mystery of life is no one really truly knows. I mean, and I have my own personal beliefs, and, you know, there is this growing amount of exploration into these other realms with the increase in popularity of psychedelic compounds. But yeah, man, it's the mystery of it. It's and there's definitely been moments in the throes of a very deep DMT experience where it feels like, got it. Like, just wait till I come back with this one, boys. It's really going to shake things up in the world. And then you come back and you're like, oh, yeah, fuck.
Damn it, how did that work again?
I read this analogy in that biocentrism book you sent me while I was in jail.
Yeah, I need to.
But
read
anyways,
that
the analogy that was made, and I forget who wrote this, so forgive me, but basically that your individual life, think about it as a Netflix show, right? So when you start watching a Netflix show, you know, you get kind of invested in it after some time. And you get invested in the characters and the plot and the emotions behind things and all that sort of stuff. And then the Netflix show ends, and you kind of have this feeling of like, oh no, like my Netflix show just ended. I was so invested in that character, and like I was so, you know, whatever. But then you go to the home screen and you're like, oh shit, there's like an endless amount of these shows to watch, you know? Well, let's move on to the next one. And
oh yeah.
I'm not trying to make the point that you shouldn't treasure your life. I think you should hold the things that you love very dearly to you. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, it's sort of freeing this notion or this idea that maybe if life isn't just a one-shot thing, maybe if there is some sort of, say, reincarnation system, or you move up dimensions, or whatever it is, if your soul really is eternal and everlasting, it's freeing to think about that, because then you can sort of live like you're never going to die. And let me clarify on that. Obviously, your body is going to get to a point where it degrades. Everybody dies, right? But there is so much pressure and stress that I think society puts on you, and you put on yourself this sort of existential, well, this is my one life. Like, I got to get things done right. Like, and I think when you lose that fear, that deep-rooted fear of death and your own mortality, it frees you up to be a more authentic version of yourself. You know, maybe that's sort of what happened with you with your, you know, ego death and rebirth, where it allowed you to become a more authentic version of yourself through this sort of tough journey you had, man. I mean, how do you feel about that, you know?
It definitely the first major thing that it did for me is it made me recognize that things aren't nearly as mundane as I'd always thought they were. Because I'd lost a lot of zest for life just from being like, well, it's boring. Like, there's nothing grander about the existence, and it's kind of pointless if I'm just going to live and then die, and then whatever I experience is done and gone, and whatever happens after that doesn't matter because I'm not around. So, basically, I got told that there are different levels of dimensionality and existence, and you can sort of grow into higher or lower levels over time, depending on what show you want to watch, what video game you want to play. And from there, I hit this point where I was like, well, what if this is just ground zero? What if this was just where we start at? And from here on, once we die, we can just dimension hop into where we want to go with all of our memories and spirit intact, if that's what we want to do. What if this is just like the very beginning? And that made me think about, what if there is life after death? What if there is continuation of this egoic consciousness, albeit with some new twists? Then, by default, I should live life more fully. I should enjoy it more. Because whether or not it's going to end, there's a chance that it won't. And if it doesn't, then I might as well keep on enjoying.
I think that's beautiful, man. I'm glad that that's sort of one of the conclusions you came to with your experimentation. But what I wanted to say is that I remember reading this study. I forget the lady who did it, but this lady was interviewing people with like terminal illnesses and people at the end of their life, right, on their deathbeds. They knew they were going to die soon, right? And one of the biggest, I think it might have been one of, or if not the biggest regret that everyone had was not allowing themselves to be happier in life. And that really was powerful to me.
Yeah.
Reading that, because that's a lot of that's one of the big messages I've taken away from my own personal experimentation with psychedelics, is that I need to enjoy the journey more. Not saying that I need to be following all these hedonistic pursuits, but I talked about this in that challenging acid journey that I had, that video that I made, where one of the core of me having that, I guess you can call it bad trip or challenging journey, was that I was realizing that my entire life I had been living just to be happy in the future, but it was a sort of tenuous thing. It was always going that cycle was always going to be that way. It didn't. I would always just told myself, once I complete college, once I get a good job, once I get this house, once I do this or that, all these material things are tenuous. The happiness, this state that I wanted to be in, was always going to escape me. You know what I'm saying? And I was realizing that during this acid trip.
That's one of the pitfalls that we all fall into. It's just, how can I make myself happier in the future rather than being happy now and also being happier in the future?
Yeah. So I know one of the things that you're pretty interested in, man, and we've done some tinkering around with together, is this idea of, and I'm going to butcher a lot of this, so don't come crashing down on me, great spirits, but your use of would you call it ritualistic magic?
Not always. I just say magic in general. Witchcraft.
Well, let's clarify for the listeners. Yes. We're not talking about magic that is like, flying on a broomstick. I'm Harry Potter. Like, not yet.
I can't shoot fireballs. I can't. Not yet.
No, but man, tell us about your interest in magic and your use of it, and also I want to know sort of the the synergistic play between magic and altered states of consciousness.
You can define magic as using one's will to elicit change on reality. And there is literally physical work, and then there is non-physical work where you are implementing your will to change reality as a whole. But there's always a physical aspect to it. As far as what I did, started with that, moved on to a couple of different systems because I was just like, I just kind of want to see what's going on with that, I like learning about it. And then I hit this point in my life where I had a psychological breakdown. I was completely and utterly stripped of who I am and what I do and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, there is something way more than I expected going on in the background behind the light screen of reality. So I kind of had this inkling that magic is a way to interact with that, not with this desk or my little altar-y things. So I started playing around with it. And very strange things would happen as a very immediate result of these kinds of
can you walk us through maybe some examples of things that happened,
So think of magic. Let me start with, I talked earlier, when you take a psychedelic, it's like you're a pair of shoes for God. You kind of recognize the ego as the shoes. You can loosen up the laces and kind of retie them, and however you want to do that. Magic is like picking a path to walk down as those shoes. You cut all of these things, these misdirections, out of your attention, out of your energetic alignment. And you focus on that one thing that you're trying to elicit, and you find the most direct, unobstructed path to go towards that. And then reality itself is, in accordance to magic, will sort of shift and realign to facilitate that, to make it happen. So as we talked in the last year, I got a certification, I got a better job, I got a house, I got
you feel like your
projects going on.
Your implementation and use of that helped you calibrate your focus so that you could step into that reality that you wanted to exist in. And the way that we're putting it with magic and all this shit makes it sound very, like I've said, woo-woo and crazy and shit. But really, man, like all these things, like alternate realities, parallel universes, infinite realities that we can exist in, and all these different things, they're being proved. They're being proved. They're being proved by science at this point. Like with quantum theory and shit like that. So I mean, and not saying that we know for a fact that there is infinite universes and all these things, but I believe there definitely could be, and I believe that there definitely could not be. But this idea that you are using your will to, like I keep saying, step into a certain reality that you want to exist in, it's cool. It's definitely cool, and I like the thought of
absolutely
integrating that and supplementing your sort of psychedelic journeys with that, in the way of there's a lot of work to be done after a very meaningful, revelatory psychedelic experience, and a lot of what it leads to is you get these feelings and these thoughts that come up, and you're like, well, I'm not existing exactly in the reality that I want to be in. Like, you know what I'm saying?
How do I get this change to happen? How do I improve this thing. The cool thing about magic isn't that you can shoot fireballs. It is that it clears your head in a way that you can see that path a little more clearly. Or that's one side of it. Or you can literally just send out the prayer that I would like this thing to happen, and then you just kind of let it fade from your mind, and you let your subconscious direct your actions to elicit that more effectively. It is very strange. It is not a simple, please God, give me a winning lottery ticket. There are all kinds of different systems that you can utilize to make change, to cause things to happen. But I think until you recognize that divine presence, that gestalt, you're literally just asking the air to do something for you. You're not recognizing that you are the air. You are both. I don't. It's either Alan Watts or Ram Dass. I can't remember which, but he said something along the lines of, "You are both the thing and the thing watching the thing." There's no true separation beyond the ego. The ego is the thing separating you from that thing. So why can't you control it? Why can't you echo some of your thoughts out of your body and into the surroundings?
Right.
And magic is just the system of doing
thinking that sounds crazy or far-fetched, think about pretty much every religious practice out there involves praying regularly. And I'm not married to any one sort of religion. You know, I like to study and, read about different types all the time. But I remember, I would say it was about a year ago, man, when I was going through a pretty rough time, and I was out on bond, and it was kind of a low point in my life. I was going through some things. I started praying every day, man. I started praying a lot every day. And not just like, all right, God, thank you for this food. Help it nourish me. Thank you. Bye. I was really praying. I was, I know. I would have these long meditative sessions, and after the meditative session, I would sit there and just pray, man. And I remember, fucking, call me a pussy, call me whatever you want, but during a lot of these prayers, I cried, and it was, I don't want to say scary, but it was crazy the amount of change that started to happen in my life while I was praying every day, Yeah.
You were quite literally discussing with God.
And I don't know
your
if
intent,
it was
your feelings,
because of some other self-autonomous being hearing my messages and then warping reality for me, or if it was just me planting things into my own psyche and then my actions reverberating from that and, causing that, little change in my reality. But either fucking way, it was working. And maybe praying had nothing to do with it. There's a difference between correlation and causation. But I don't know. You hear about it so much. I'm not the only person I feel like who has experienced this, where you pray and things, not always, you're not going to pray for your grandma to come back to life out of the grave and to receive $1 billion and it happens, but there's a lot of people who testify to the fact that when they pray, things start to can start to look up, and it feels like they're being listened to. And this goes back to this idea that, all is one and all this shit, with God. Because, if we really are all interconnected in the way that I personally believe we are, sending that message out there into the heavens, the cosmos, the Akashic records, whatever it is, you know, I feel like it could have some sort of, you know, positive wrinkle on your life. And man, I don't fucking know. You know, I don't know. But there is so much about our world that is bizarre and magical and unexplained and shit that 100 years ago would have been thought of as fucking witchcraft is being scientifically proven now. So I don't think it's too wishful of thinking to think that, I don't know.
Well, you're doing two things. The first of which, whenever you pray, you're doing two things. The first of which is you are manifesting, you are condensing the emotional or logical, whatever energy that you're feeling, you are condensing that into a directive. And then the second thing that you're doing is you are sending that to your higher self, to your outer world. The thing that is not your ego, you're sending it to that. So when those two things work together, they elicit change. They are manifesting change in your reality. Whether it's something that you are personally working on with the sweat of your brow, or whether it's something that simply happens to you externally, that is the magic. That is what magicians talk about. And yes, there are all these different levels of communing with spirits and all of that kind of stuff. But what it really all boils down to is eliciting change through
and
manifesting
that's why
desire.
I love all of the people, all of my dear fellow psychonauts out there who place such a strong emphasis on not only the experience that you're having, but the work that you do afterwards. Because whatever happens during a psychedelic experience, you know, with the neuroplasticity, the different brainwave states, it allows you to tap into something and access a different way of thinking, different perspectives. It's a good pattern interrupter, because a lot of life is these ebbs and flows of momentum, and like you're on a downward spiral, you're on an upward, you know, and but you get stuck in these ruts, and it's hard to break out of it when you're every single day. It's like, well, shit, I'm depressed again today. I'm anxious again today. I gotta still pay rent at the end of the month. Having some sort of pattern interrupter, like a psychedelic, and I'm not saying a psychedelic is the only way to achieve these things, people. Please don't misconstrue my message here for that. But I think there's so much value in that, you know, being able to use that as a catalyst, you know. And I'm kind of, what do you say, beating a dead horse? Is that how you say it? You know, I'm kind of beating a dead horse with a lot of these things, but there's so much, there's so much, a lot of these things intertwine and intertangle, you know, like with what you're talking about with magic and using your free will to step into where you want to go. You can do the same thing with integrating a psychedelic experience. You know what I mean? The psychedelic illuminates to you that you are possible of molding your reality better, you know?
All these things are just tools. The social conventions, the psychedelics, the activities that you do on them, they all are tools, and you can learn how to use them. And the more you learn how to use them, the better you're going to get with them. Just don't hit yourself in the face with a wrench. It's really all it amounts to.
Well,
learn how to stop hitting yourself in the face.
In the sort of psychedelic, psychonaut community, you see a lot of people, and I was guilty of this too myself at one point, who are always just reaching for like these peak experiences. Like, well, I took 30 hits of acid, or I tried, you know, MXC in combination with all this shit, and always trying the different molecules. And that's great. You know, everyone walks their own path. I've definitely done a lot of that shit too, and I probably will for the rest of my life continue to experiment with different things and shit. But I think there's something to be said about just generally deepening your relationship with something, whether that be meditation, whether that be magic practice, whether that be mushrooms. You know, my big shtick is obviously fucking DMT. You know, but I don't know. You don't always have to have the higher doses.
Yeah.
I mean, it does make a difference.
I think if you have to have the higher doses, like if you can't experience it without having the higher doses, I think that is the sign that you need to replace your
maybe not.
relationship
I mean,
with the substance.
With these substances, they affect everyone differently. Everyone has a different sort of, you know, biochemistry going on. Like, you know, some people might not feel anything from acid, or like, see, my thing is I really, don't get me wrong, I enjoy acid. I love some good LSD. But, and I know this is different for everybody. That's why I'm bringing this point up here. In my personal experience, acid is very external. It puts a very kind of bright twinkle on the world, but it's not a lot of deep internal exploration there for me, even though there has been moments where I've had some revelations and things like that. On the other hand, mushrooms is super internal for me. It's very... I honestly, if I'm going to like go on a hike or be with a buddy, I have to take a relatively lower dose of mushrooms, or else I'm going to be laid out there like going through very deep emotions, communing with what I feel like is a divine presence. But with acid, I can take 8 hits of acid and hang out with a buddy and be very present and not be super internal. There's not a one size fits all way of approaching these things, you know. So that's why I made that comment of deepening your relationship with it in terms of figuring out what works for you. It might be, let's say, once every 2 or 3 months having a very large journey, or just when you feel called to it. I don't know. It's very personal. You know, we talk about these, like, say, classic psychedelics, and we've talked about them a lot on this episode. You know, LSD, mushrooms, DMT, and we talk a lot about having this sort of ceremony around it. And I saw someone on Reddit post something about the difference between DMT and salvia, right? Salvia divinorum. Anyways, so I commented on this post and, you know, kind of gave my 2 cents about, in my personal experience, you know, salvia is very much up there in terms of strength and intensity as DMT, but it had such a jarring, weird feeling to it, like uncomfortable. It had a different spirit to it, right? And the guy... See,
I think you still need to try it the shamanistic
That's what I was about to say, is that this guy commented to my comment and was like, well, have you ever thought about, you know, setting it up in a very ceremonial setting like you would something with DMT and shit like that? And I was sitting there thinking, and I was like, you know what, man? Maybe I was wrong about salvia, because every single time that I did salvia, it was when I was still in my very, like, youthful psychedelic evangelist days, where it was just like, what can I get my hands on? What'll make me spin out the craziest? Right. And so when I did it, it was my intentions weren't very, very clear or benevolent, and I, you know, me and Matt, we just sort of did it as like, well, shit, let's see what'll happen, bro. So I wonder what would happen if I set it up in a very ritualistic, ceremonial, you know, paying my respects to the substance, sort of like, you know, obviously I do with DMT. I wonder if that would, I almost definitely feel like it would affect the experience. And then there was I was going down this rabbit hole of reading about people who were very connected to salvia, like using it as a tool. Like someone would use DMT or something like that, you know, which was just interesting to me to think that, you know, there's people out there smoking salvia and using it for growth, you know?
I don't know how they manage that, but set and setting, like, it's mentioned every time somebody's learning about psychedelics. Set and setting are important, and it's the same as whenever you're trying to do a magical ceremony, or you're trying to party with friends, or you're trying to just kind of have chill vibes. The setting that you utilize will change the experience. It will drastically change it. If you go to a crack house and take acid, you're going to have a cracked out experience.
Yeah, very true, man.
You go to
Or
a
hell,
rave, you're going to have a rave experience.
you can go to a rave and take acid and be laid out on the floor going through your mommy issues. Who knows? You know? I'm sure that there is plenty of people who have experienced that, I'm sure. You know? But no, the set and setting, it definitely does have, it's fundamentally key.
It'll change the whole experience, depending on what you're trying to elicit going into it.
All right, man. So is there anything else you want to leave people with? You know, this has been fucking great.
Now your followers are enlightened. They're more enlightened. They can achieve the platinum gold enlightenment plan for only $1,500 a month.
Do we get some sort of discount code for that?
Yeah, it's just the $$ 5 times. It's not actually any money off, though. It's just a discount code.
Appreciate you doing this with me today. You know, I love you, bro. Yeah, everyone. Josh, my buddy Josh. That's it.